In this lesson, you're going to learn multiple ways of how to build a screen of your app. Now, I know you're itching to build user interfaces like these. These were done by our designer JC in a piece of software called Figma. As you improve your skills, you'll be able to translate designs like these into your own app inside Xcode. By the end of the lesson, you'll have built this, using only these few basic elements: a few layout containers, a few views, and a few modifiers. Considering that we're only 3 lessons in, this is amazing progress. Okay, buckle up, let's get started. Oh, and just a quick note, in the last lesson, you learned how to use Xcode, so if you need a refresher, check it out right over there. Also, if you're enjoying the series so far, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss the next lesson. Let's quickly review how these building blocks come together to form the user interface, or UI for short. So views are the elements that the user sees on the screen. Modifiers are applied to the views to change its behavior or look and feel. Finally, layout containers organize and arrange views in various ways. Now, fun fact, layout containers are also considered as a view. Just think of them as container views. All right, let's start by creating our Xcode project. So go ahead and start a new project. Under iOS, let's choose App. I'm going to name mine L3 Demo 2 actually, because I've built this once before. Team you can leave as none. Organization identifier should be the same as before. And then make sure it says SwiftUI and Swift. Core data and tests are unchecked. Then let's go ahead and click on Next. And I'm going to save it on my desktop. You can leave Create Git repository unchecked as well. Okay, so here is our brand new project. Let's expand the window a little bit so we have some space. And the first thing we are going to do is just add the image asset for that card into our asset library. Now, again, just like last time, you can put whatever asset you want. I'm going to reuse the Niagara Falls image asset that I used back in the lesson 1 demo. So go ahead and do that. Okay, now, in order to build this card, I first need some idea of what I'm going to be building. Now, whether that's just in my imagination or maybe a rough sketch on a piece of paper, or perhaps it's a design by a designer. In this case, I had this in my head and I wanted to lay out the biggest elements first. And that would be the image and the 2 pieces of text. In addition to that, I also have in mind the basic layout container that I'm going to use first. In this case, that would be the vertical stack, which arranges the views on top of each other. So let's go into our content view first, which is sort of the default view that gets created for you. And I'm going to remove the V stack along with its padding modifier. So we should be left with body, opening bracket, ending bracket, and then this content view here, opening bracket, ending bracket. What we're going to type in, so at this point, actually, the way we've been doing it is by using the library. If you feel confident, you can just type out the code. If you don't feel that confident yet, you can go ahead, click this plus icon, open up the library, make sure you're on this views tab, and just type in image and drag and drop it. That's perfectly fine. This is a perfectly safe way to build up to the point where you're comfortable just writing the code, and then sooner or later you won't even be using this library. For the image name, we are going to follow what we have in the asset library, whatever your asset is named right there. So remember to use the quotation marks and we should see an image. Perfect. Now, obviously it's too big. I want it to fit on the screen. So we are going to add the resizable modifier. So what you do is press dot and the autocomplete menu will pop up, and I'm just going to choose resizable. Again, you can do that from the library, but make sure you go to the second tab, right, which is the list of modifiers. So you're going to search for resizable. You're going to just drag it and drop it there. Another one we're going to add is aspect ratio, because this looks kind of squished, right? And this is all review right now from lesson 1. We've done this together before. It's going to be exactly the same way. So there's aspect ratio. I'm going to hit dot to open up autocomplete again and choose, I'm going to type in fit, or just choose it from the menu. Again, if you don't see it from the menu, you can just type dot fit and you'll still get the same result as what I'm seeing here. And hit enter. I'm going to do dot again. This time I'm going to add corner radius. and this is going to round the corners nicely. I'm going to put 15 as the amount of rounding that I want. And remember, in the inspector view here, you can choose this tab to configure the modifiers and the view itself. So you can see here, this is the image, this Niagara Falls. I can change the aspect ratio, change the color. I can add some padding. Here's the corner radius. I can increase it or decrease it because my cursor is right now, it's on image. If it's on body, I won't see that there. Okay, so that does it for the image. Now, I said that we would use the vertical stack to arrange it, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Again, I'm just going to type it out, but feel free to use the image library. And the vertical stack, whatever is inside of this pair of brackets right here, those are the views that get arranged on top of each other. So we're going to have to move this image. I'm going to press Command X to cut it and put my cursor inside the brackets, press Command V to paste it in there. And then I'm going to add the text elements. So let's go ahead and type in text, quotation marks, Niagara Falls. Next, let's add the description. So I'm going to put another text element here, and you can type whatever you want. All right, that's speaking pretty highly of the falls. Now, what we're going to do is I want everything to be left aligned and also to add some spacing between these elements. So if I put my cursor on the VStack, we can come over here and into the inspector panel, and we can actually configure those things. So let's see how that changes the code so that next time we can just type in the code straight away without having to use the user interface. So I'm going to click this alignment, and that adds this alignment parameter here and changes it to leading. Let's change the spacing. I'm going to put 20 in there. And you see that adds another parameter, spacing equals 20. And then in the preview, you can see those things have taken effect here. Now let's make the title a little bigger here, Niagara Falls. So I'm going to put my cursor on the text, and we're going to change the font to perhaps title font. And let's make it bold. Let's change the weight to bold. Next, I want to create the ratings to the right of the Niagara Falls title. Now, when I see things side by side, I think horizontal stack. This is the same as a vertical stack, but instead of arranging things on top of each other, the horizontal stack arranges things side by side. So let's go check it out. So back inside Xcode here, since this is the first time we're using it, let's go ahead and bring it out from the library so we can see the code. Let's go into the views tab right here and type horizontal stack. That's the one right here. And let's drag it right before the Niagara Falls text. As you can see, it looks exactly like the VStack, except it's an HStack. So we're going to move this Niagara Falls title into the brackets in between there. Command X to cut it, Command V to paste it. Now, visually nothing changes because I don't have anything aside from that text inside the HStack. But one thing I want you to notice right now is that we have an HStack inside of a VStack. So this is how you can begin to build a layout from a combination of layout containers to arrange the views as you want them. You can nest these layout containers. Now let's go ahead and add an image beside the Niagara Falls. We use the image element just like how we displayed the waterfalls, and we can search and find an image of 4 stars or 4.5 stars, whatever we want to display. Then we can add that to our asset library just like we've done here, and then we can put the image name here to display it. But I want to show you a different and arguably better way to do this using something called SF symbols. Let's remove this image view for now, and let me bring up this browser window. Now, SF symbols, they are a set of 4,400 symbols or icons on the iOS system that you can use for free because they're already installed on iOS. All you have to do is the appropriate name for these icons and you can display them. You don't need to search for any images or anything. The best thing is that they behave like text so that you can change the foreground color of them, you can change the size of them and things like that very, very easily. Let's go back into Xcode and see how we can use an SF symbol to display the stars. So just like displaying an image, we use the image view, but instead of specifying the asset library name like we have up here, we're going to specify the system name of the SF symbol. So we type in system name, that should come up, and notice that it's lowercase s, uppercase N with a colon, and then we're going to put a name, the name of the SF symbol, and this has got to be in quotations as well. So I'm going to put star, and you can see it instantly shows up. I did not have to add this star image into our asset library or anything like that. Another really cool thing is that often these symbols come with an outline version as well as a filled version. And typically the filled version, you just have to add .fill to the end of the name, and that's what you get. Now you might be wondering, how would I know this system name? Well, that's where this comes in handy. So SF Symbols is a free download for an app that looks like this, and it allows you to either browse through the symbols or search for it. So if I search for star, I can see these are all of the system names that I can use. Look, there's star, star.fill, which is what we just used, and there's even this one, it's half star. Now, if you don't want to download this official app by Apple, I'm sure, I think in the past there were other websites which listed out all the SF symbols. You can search SF symbol browser or something like that in Google. But seeing as how this is the official Apple app, and I'm sure this will get updated first before those third-party websites do, I would recommend that you use this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give Niagara Falls 4.5 stars. So I'm going to put 4 of these and 1 of these. So I'm going to actually copy this name, and that's going to copy this part down here. Let's go back to Xcode, and I am going to image system name and paste, oops, I need quotations, right? And now I have 1.5. So all I'm going to do is copy this, paste it a couple of times so that we have there 4.5 stars. Now this doesn't look quite right as well, right? I want to push the stars all the way to the right, and they're also a little big and they're not the color that I want. So how do we address this? Well, first of all, let me explain how these elements are arranged inside an HStack. So let's go into selection mode for now so that I can select these elements and show you this outline. You'll notice that inside this HStack only goes up to here. What's happening is that this HStack is only as wide as it needs to be to fit all of the elements inside of it. Furthermore, these elements inside of it, you can see the outline is right up against the text element. Same thing with the images, right? That blue outline, that's the surrounding frame. That's how much space it takes up. It is only as big as that view needs to be. Now, this is typical of views. They only have a frame as big as it needs to be, but there are some views that actually take up as much space as it can. So that is actually what we want to put. One of these elements is called a spacer. Now this spacer view will basically take up as much space as it can. So let me demonstrate this. Again, since it's the first time we've used this, let's open up the library under views. Let's search for spacer. There we go. A flexible space that expands along the major axis of its containing stack layout, or both axes if it's not contained in the stack. Essentially, it's just saying that it's going to take up as much space as possible. Look at what happens here. By putting a spacer in between the text and the stars right here, first of all, it pushes the HStack right as wide as it can be. Because remember, the HStack expands to as much space as the elements inside of it requires. The text still requires just that bare minimum. The stars, again, requires the bare minimum, but the spacer, on the other hand, is taking up all this empty space right here. You don't see the outline, but it's right there in the middle. So the spacer is a great way to space elements apart, as its name suggests. Now, one handy tip before we move on, if you have multiple spacers in the same container, it divides up all of the available space by the number of spacers you have. So if I put a spacer before the text and after the images here, you can see that this space and this space and this space are all equal. So the spacers take up all the available space and divvies them up between each other evenly. Right, but I'm gonna remove those two. Just gonna leave the spacer element in the middle. It's gonna take everything up here. We're gonna add some padding to the left and right later anyways. Okay, so let's finish up this ratings by adding some text right below the stars. In our initial design, we had, in brackets, a couple of reviews, or the number of reviews there. So how would we do that? So I could put a piece of text right here that said text. Just put some brackets, reviews, like that. But you can see here, it does that, not the effect that we wanted. Why not nest another layout container? So what we're going to do here, so this is an HStack, right? I'm going to put these 5 stars in a VStack so that we can put the text right under it. So let's create a VStack right here. And we are going to put the images in there. As you can see, it lays it out on top of each other as expected. And I'm going to put the review text down there as well. Now, this is sort of what I want, but I need to lay these out horizontally, right? So I'm going to nest an HStack in there. And so that actually gives me what I want. Now, the stars and the reviews text is a little large for my liking. So, and plus it's not the right color too. So I am going to add some modifiers to it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to type this out, and I encourage you to do so as well. If you don't remember, following along and typing it out is a great way to remember. So to change the color, we use foreground color, and I'm going to hit dot so we can bring up autocomplete. I'm going to choose orange, press enter. There it is, it's orange. I am going to go to the end and hit dot again, and this time I'm going to change the font. And I'm going to hit dot again, and I'm going to choose caption to make it smaller. So that's about the size that I would want it. Now I would have to apply, let me just make some more space so it's easier to see. Yeah, perfect. Now I could apply these two things to each star like that, right? And that would essentially get me what I want. But there is a better way to do this, and that is to put these two modifiers instead on the HStack right here. Okay, watch what happens. I'm going to take off these modifiers. You can see that each of them have the orange color and the caption size. The reason for this is because modifiers on a container view get applied to all the views inside of it. That's awesome, right? So I actually want the same thing to happen to this. So instead of applying it on the HStack, why don't we put it on the VStack so that it includes this text element? So Command X, Command V. Now you can see the orange color in the caption gets applied to the whole thing. And now for the final piece of content on the card itself, and those are the icons on the lower right corner. So for this, it is pretty simple because we have this description text already in a VStack. So under here, we're going to add the icons. We're going to use S of symbols. We're going to use system name, and let's bring up our trusty app here. This is going to be, let's use binoculars, and we're going to choose the filled one. Let's copy name and paste it in there. Whoops, we need quotations like that. Those binoculars right there. Let's add another one. This one is going to be, I'm going to use a fork and knife. Copy that. And we're going to put that. We're going to put the fork and knife first. Now I'm going to put these two into an HStack. Like that. and I am going to space them so that it is on the right hand side. So all I'm going to do is add a spacer element before the two images, which pushes it all the way to the right. And finally, we are going to change the color and the size. So we're going to add a foreground of gray and a font of caption. Foreground color gray, font caption. Now you can see how typing it together with autocomplete is way faster than opening up the library each time to choose the modifiers. And again, if you're still more comfortable with doing it this way, that's completely fine. I love this new version of Xcode and SwiftUI where you can have multiple ways of doing things. You can configure things through the inspector because it makes it the learning experience much better and easier. As you progress, you'll probably be not even touching the library or in the inspector panel. You'll just be typing and you'll be moving really, really fast. So don't worry if you're not there yet, you will get there if you continue to progress along this journey. Okay, so next up we have the background for this card. Now let's go ahead. This is the vertical stack, right? You can see when I select this blue outline. Just a quick note for Xcode 16. For Xcode 16 in the preview, click on this icon right here to enable the blue outlined frames so that you can see the size of your elements. Afterwards, make sure you click on this button to get back to live preview. That's where we want to be as we are building our UI so that you can get a live preview of it. All right, now back to the tutorial. Highlights the boundaries or the frame of this VStack. So like the HStack, the VStack only takes up as much space as it needs to. So you can see that it's right up against the edge right there. So if we go down, this is the ending bracket for the VStack right here. If you're not sure, what you can do is collapse the code in between the opening bracket and the closing bracket, just so it's easier to read. So how you can do that is you press your, click your cursor here inside the VStack, and you can go into right here, code folding, and you can fold and unfold. Just take note of those shortcut keys inside Xcode so you don't need to come into this menu all the time. But I'm going to choose fold and watch what happens. See, it folds all of that stuff into these two brackets so that it's easier to work with. And then it's a visual thing. That's all it is. And if you want to open it back up, you can double click it to open it back up. And again, once you get familiar with Xcode, you don't even need to bring out that menu. You can use your keyboard and just do that, and you can move really fast. So the reason I wanted to do that is because I want to add a modifier to the VStack. And in particular, the one I want to add is, let's go under modifiers and choose background. This one right here. Layers the given view behind this view. So essentially it allows me to specify a view as a background to the VStack. So let's see how we can use this to our advantage. So this is the background for the VStack, and I wonder why it changes it to blue. I haven't even specified any view, but that was what I was going to do. So I was going to put a rectangle to be specific. So rectangle is a view. You can find it actually inside the view library here. It's a simple shape that you can specify foreground color, corner radius, and things like that. So I'm going to drag and put that in between the brackets of the modifier. By default, I guess it's black. So this is where things start to get interesting. I'm going to add modifiers to the rectangle to change its look and feel. And that essentially is the background for the VStack. So let's go ahead and add a foreground color to my rectangle. So I can say, dot blue, for example, and that would be blue. You can say green, and that would be green, right? So let's leave it as green for now. We're going to change it later because if I change it to white right now, we won't be able to see it. Now, the thing is, we probably want some spacing, right? You can see this is right up against the edge. So what we're going to do is add some padding. We're just going to use the padding modifier like we've done before. And great, we have some padding between the edges of the screen and the card. But what about padding inside of the card, right? You can see the green background. We'd want some padding there. So what I'm going to do is add another padding modifier right here before the background modifier. And you can see that that's this padding right here, whereas this padding is this. Now, I know that might be a little bit confusing, but the way to think about this is that you have your VStack. This is your original view. And then these modifiers get applied in sequence. That means in order. So if you look at the code that we have right now, first we have padding. So that adds, actually, let me just remove this code for now. I'm going to press Command X so that you can see what we have. So without this padding modifier, you can see that the blue frame, right, is right there. If I add the padding element, essentially adds padding to all four sides. And now I put the background modifier on there. Let me just remove that last padding bit. Right, the background gets applied to the padding as well. And then when I put another padding modifier, it gets applied to the outside of the background. Like that. What happens if, let's say I move this padding modifier here, right? Then we get padding and then another set of padding. So that's why it's so thick. And then the background gets applied. If I take these two padding elements and I put it after the background, then we get something like this where there's no padding, right? The background gets applied to the VStack, and then you have a set of outer padding and another set of outer padding. So the order matters, sequence matters here. Okay, so now that you understand that, let's change this foreground color to white, and we're gonna add another modifier to the rectangle. And let's create some space here. Dot shadow. Now I'm just gonna specify 15 for the radius, and you can see that you have a nice shadow effect. That's how easy it is to apply that. Now the last thing to do is to apply a corner radius to our card. Now I don't want to apply it after the shadow. I actually want to apply it before the shadow because I want the shadow to apply to the rounded card and not round the corners of the shadow, because remember, order matters, right? So if I do corner radius 15, you can see that, let's choose this. You can see that I have the rounded corners and then the shadow gets applied. But let's say we do it the other way around, right? And I put a corner radius on the shadow. You can see it completely breaks things. So I want to round the card first and then apply the shadow to the rounded card. Essentially, this is the rectangle. We're using it as a background for that VStack. Okay, so finally, the last step is to put that mint green background on everything. And just like in lesson 1, we've done this before. So we are going to use a depth stack, right? And we're going to put a base color at the bottom, and then this whole VStack card, this whole thing on top of that color. So let's do that. If you remember, what is a depth stack? It is a Z stack, like that. I'm going to put a color. I'm going to choose mint, system mint, okay? And again, this is the safe area, right? So we have to apply another modifier to it. So ignores safe area. So it goes all the way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the VStack on top of it. So this whole thing right here, and keep in mind this is still collapsed, which also makes it easy to select. Command X, Command V to paste it inside the Z stack. So there you have it. So how was that? As you build more user interfaces inside Xcode, you're just going to get faster and better. Remember that you can get the associated Xcode project with this lesson, as well as any challenges and quizzes, by creating a free CodeWithChris account and taking this course on our learning platform. We also have a free community where you can get help if you are stuck on something. Just visit codecrew.codewithchris.com. In the next lesson, we are going to build an app that is not just the user interface, but also includes app logic and user interaction. So it's going to be a good one. I'll see you there.